Well, tonight we're going to start our journey through James, and we're going to start in the first chapter of James, and we're going to be focusing on 4 verses, and all 4 are life verses for me. And a life verse is a favorite verse that you try to live your life by. And if you don't have a life verse, I'd really encourage you to start building them up, maybe even start this evening if you haven't. So we're going to start by looking at verses 2 through 4 in James, and we're going to talk about joy in our trials. And that sounds like an oxymoron, but verses 13 through 15, we're going to talk about temptation. And verses 18, we're going to talk about our value in God. And verse 22, what we should do with what we learn from God's word. But before we get started, I'd like to share something a little bit funny about a trial that a man had gone through, and he had gotten injured while he was on the job. So he had to fill out this insurance claim form, but the insurance company contacted him and asked for more information. Now, this was his response. I am writing in response to your request for additional information for Section 3 of the accident claim form. I put poor planning as the cause of my accident. You said in your letter that I should explain more fully, and I trust the following details will be sufficient. I am an amateur radio operator, and on the day of the accident, I was working alone on the top section of my 80-foot tower. When I had completed my work, I discovered that I had, over the course of several trips up and down the tower, brought up about 300 pounds of tools and spare equipment. Rather than carry the now unneeded tools and material down by hand, I decided to lower the items down in a barrel by using a pulley, which was attached to the pole at the top of the tower. Securing the rope at the ground level, I went up to the top of the tower and loaded all the tools and material into the barrel. Then I went back to the ground and untied the rope, holding it tightly to ensure a slow descent of the 300 pounds of tools. You will note in Section 11 of the accident claim form that I only weigh 165 pounds. Due to the surprise of being jerked off the ground so suddenly, I lost my presence of mind and I forgot to let go of the rope. Needless to say, I proceeded at a rather rapid rate of speed up the side of the tower. In the vicinity of about 40 feet, I met the barrel coming down. This explains the fracture of my skull and the broken collarbone. Slowed only slightly, I continued my rapid ascent, not stopping till my fingers of my right hand were 2 knuckles deep into the pulley at the top of the tower. Fortunately, by this time, I had regained my presence of mind and was able to hold onto the rope in spite of my pain. At approximately the same time, however, the barrel of tools hit the ground and the bottom fell out. And devoid of the weight of the tools, the barrel now weighed only approximately 20 pounds. I refer again to my weight in Section 11. And as you might imagine, I began a rapid descent down the side of the tower. In the vicinity of about 40 feet, I met the barrel again coming up. This accounts for the 2 fractured ankles and the lacerations on my legs and lower body. The encounter with the barrel slowed me enough to lessen my injuries when I fell to the ground onto the pile of tools. And fortunately, only 3 vertebrae were cracked. I am sorry to report, however, that as I lay there on top of the tools in pain, unable to stand, and watching the empty barrel 80 feet above me, I again lost my presence of mind and I let go of the rope. Anyways, I'm not sure this guy found much joy in his trials of this funny story, but in all seriousness, we're going to talk about how God says we can find joy in our trials. But before we do, I want to share another story, but this is a true story. All right, now I was a teacher at Tri-County High School, and I know there's some Tri-County Vikings in here. Are there any Vikings in here? There is. I know they are. They're just too afraid to say anything. And Tri-County's just north of here. And I have this young man. His name was Brian, as one of my students. It was a sophomore year, and he was 6'4", and he was thin as a rail. He was so skinny that when he turned sideways and stuck out his tongue, he looked like a zipper. One day, Brian and a friend came up with what they thought was this great idea. They decided they were going to break into someone's garage after school and steal their tools and equipment. Not such a great idea, but guess what? They actually got away with it. So they had what they thought was another brilliant idea. Guess what that was? To go back the next day and to get more. Turn to the person next to you and say, "This ain't gonna be good." Guess what happened? The owner thought whoever had burglarized him might return. So he decided to stay home from work and wait for them. But he had a friend, a gun. Well, Brian and his friend did return that very next day, and the owner heard them rustling in the garage, and he came out to see what it was. Brian and his friend, they were just startled that someone was home, so they took off running. Now, the owner yelled at them to stop. They didn't. So guess what the owner did? He shot. Brian got hit in the side, and he fell to the ground. He laid in the pool of blood until the police and the ambulance arrived. Now, Brian's seat in my classroom is set empty for like 2 weeks while he was recovering from his gunshot wounds. When Brian finally returned to class, I asked him, "Did you learn anything from that while you were laying on the ground, possibly bleeding to death?" Brian said, "Yeah, I did. I'll never do that again." You know, Brian did learn a lot from his experience because he decided to use his trial to turn his life around. He asked for forgiveness from the owner, and he committed not to steal from others again. And he was also determined not to let his mistakes define him as a loser or disqualify him from doing anything important. Now, Brian had tried out for the varsity basketball team his junior year, and he had never played before. He never played any basketball, so he was pretty rough around the edges, and he had little or no skills. But he had a few things going for him, though. He was determined, and he was a hard worker. I just happened to be the assistant varsity coach that year. And at the time, my job was to work specifically with Brian, since he didn't know much about basketball. But since he was so tall, his position was center or low post, which he played near the basket. While the other players went through drills and plays, as a team, Brian and I would do rebounding and post drills over and over and over every day, just the two of us. I would have Brian turn his back to the backboard, and I would throw the ball up against the backboard, and he'd have to spin, catch it with his hands above his head, and quickly put it into the basket. And we would just do that over and over and over again, and so he would get quick at it. You know, it was very monotonous, and I'm sure Brian was quite bored with having to go through these drills over and over again. And I had to teach him some low post moves because he had never played basketball before. And we'd do one low post move, and we'd do it over and over again until he got fairly good at it. Then I'd teach him another low post move, and so on and so forth. Now, some people would have gotten really frustrated with all that repetition and want to quit, but in the end, Brian's choices to persevere paid off. By the time Brian was a senior, he had gained a little bit of weight, and he had grown another 4 inches to 6'8". Do you guys know how tall that is? That's as tall as that door, the top of that door back there. Now, during Brian's senior year, he ended up setting the single-season rebound record at Tri-County High School. And he wasn't even a starter at the beginning of the year. And the last time I looked, his record still stands today. Brian, the one who was shot for stealing and who had never played basketball before, helped lead his team to a great season. Brian also became a successful businessman with 2 businesses in Howard City. So, what does the Bible say about going through trials like the one that Brian had experienced? Now, James 1, 2 through 4 says, "Consider it pure joys, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." Now, this verse doesn't mean, wow, this is great. I got shot for stealing. I had to deal with the criminal justice system as a teen. I was nearly killed and hospitalized, and I had to deal with my distraught parents. According to this verse, I should consider my trials pure joy. Whoopee! That was a lot of fun. Listen, that isn't what the verse means. That's ridiculous. This is what God is saying through James 1, verses 2 through 4. I want to show you something through the mess that you're going through. It will test your faith, but if you hang in there, over time, it will strengthen you, it will mature you, and it will complete you if you learn and grow from it. And that's where the joy comes from. God wants to use the trials in our lives to help shape us to become better people. Listen, Romans 3:23 says we all sin and we all fall short of God's glory. Everyone makes mistakes. We all sin. We all get knocked down like Brian did. But that's not the question. The question is, do you stay down? Listen, the champions in life, like Brian, have had some severe blows or trials, and they've been knocked down to the ground. Right, we've all been knocked off our feet, right? I have. We've been knocked to the ground at one time or another. But there's something within the champions in life that say, I'm not going to lie here on the mat anymore. This is not my lot in life. I need to get back up. I need to enter the arena of action again. And it's those people who are successful. People look at successful people and they think, oh, they've got the good life. They've had it easy. But listen, not always. I could tell you most successful people have had as many challenges and struggles as unsuccessful people. They've had adversity just like unsuccessful people. They have had as many trials and temptations as unsuccessful people. The difference is when they got knocked down, they got back up. They didn't stay on the ground licking their wounds. The question isn't, have you been knocked down? We all have. We all will. It continues in life, right? The question is, do you have the courage to get back up and to learn and to grow from it? People that succeed in life have a desire to get back up again and again and again when they get knocked down. So what about you? Are you going through a trial? Or you've made a mistake and now you're choosing to beat yourself up over it day after day after day? Or are you going to choose to forgive yourself and to learn and grow from it? Men, it is a choice. This does not have to be the end of your story. So when going through a trial, are you going to choose to get bitter or are you going to choose to get better? Are you going to choose to beat yourself up and ask Jesus, why me? Or are you going to choose to forgive yourself and ask Jesus, what can I learn from this to help me become a better person? Look at Thomas Edison, the inventor of the light bulb. He said, I haven't failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that didn't work. Look at Abraham Lincoln. He was born into poverty. He failed at business twice. He lost 8 elections, had a nervous breakdown, yet he became one of the greatest presidents of all time. Look at the Detroit Lions. Now, I used to use them as a joke, but I can't use them as a joke anymore. They're a great example of success after so many losing seasons. So what I'm getting at is your trials are a lot like manure. Say what, Randy? My trials are like manure. Yeah, manure stinks, right? But when you put manure on plants, it helps them grow, right? Well, the same thing is true with our trials. When going through a trial, it stinks, right? Nobody likes going through them. But according to the Bible, it says that God can use our trials to help us grow and strengthen us and mature us. And again, that's where the joy can be found. You know, as a teacher, I teach my students lessons, and then I give them a test. In life, God gives us a test that teaches us a lesson. Listen, sometimes when people have gone through a trial, temptation can follow. So we're going to talk about temptation next. In James 1, 13 through 15, it says, each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desire and enticed. Then, after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin. And sin, when it's full grown, gives birth to death. Okay, I'd like to share a story on how Eskimos trap a wolf, and as an illustration of the power of temptation. It's a great illustration of the self-destructive nature of our lust to sin, and it's quite simple. Well, first you grab a nice large hunting knife, and you hone the blade until it's razor sharp. Then you coat the blade with animal blood by dipping it in blood and letting it freeze, layer by layer by layer. And then you look for where the wolves have been spotted, their tracks and their droppings. After that, you pack the knife in snow with the blood-coated blade up. And then you leave it. That's all there is to it. Like I said, it's pretty simple. Now the wolf will smell the blood on the knife, and he'll follow his instincts to the source of the appetizing scent. Upon finding the knife, the wolf would be tempted to lick the bloody blade. As he does, the frozen blood will arouse his animal hunger and will start licking faster and faster until the ice is licked away and the sharp blade is exposed. Because of his ravenous hunger, the wolf doesn't even notice that the naked blade is exposed and begins to shred his own tongue, and the blood that he's licking becomes his own. He continues to lap blood from his own tongue until the loss of blood weakens him, and he slumps into the snow and dies. It's that simple. And this is a great picture of James 1, 13, 15, and how Satan, not God, lures us by tempting us with our own lusts, and he tries to trap us and destroy us. We think that doing wrong, such as stealing like Brian did, cursing, lying, cheating, using drugs, or a host of other things might seem appealing and maybe even okay, but without even realizing it, our own lust can lead to evil actions or sin, which can lead to danger and even death. So it starts with being tempted. Listen, guys, there's nothing wrong with being tempted. We all are tempted to do wrong. Even Jesus was tempted for 40 days and 40 nights out in the wilderness, right? But it's when we act on our temptation, and that's when it becomes sin. When we know it's wrong, but we do it anyway. And sin can lead to a death of sorts. Not necessarily a physical death like Brian almost faced, but it could lead to a relational death between a family member, like your child or your wife, or even an emotional death or a financial death or even a spiritual death. It's a terrible thing that even as we too can be consumed by our own lusts to sin, we let Satan tempt us, then we let our own desires trap us. Listen, men, don't be fooled by the temptation to sin. The wrong choice may seem attractive, even delicious, but it's actually like licking the bloody knife. It's gross and it's nasty and it can ruin us or possibly even destroy us in the end. It's only by God's grace that we can be kept from the wolf's fate. Listen, man, if you're being tempted to sin, the Bible makes it pretty easy for us. It says to flee or get your buns out of there. Don't do it. Okay, so if you do act on temptation or sin, repent. Ask God for forgiveness and anyone else that you may have hurt, and then turn away from that sin. Now, many years after Brian had graduated, I was at the corner bar right here in Rockford when this mountain of a man walked to my table. He pulled up a chair and he plopped down right next to me. And he glared at me like he wanted to kill me. You guys, this guy was huge. He was ginormous. He's bigger than anyone in this room. In a deep, stern voice, he said, "Mr. Badge?" And as manly voice as I could muster, I said, "Yes." He said, "I want to thank you so much for all that you did for me." I said, "Brian?" And a huge smile came over his face, and we shook hands, and we talked for a while. And just to let you know, that was a blessing. You know, sometimes when we've been through a terrible trial like Brian's, or we've acted on a temptation and sin, we let it define us as a loser or disqualify us from doing anything important. Listen to this verse in James 1:18 from the New Living Translation. I love this translation. It says, "We, out of all of creation, became his prized possession." That means out of everything that God has ever created in the whole world or in the universe, we are his prized possession. It doesn't matter what trial or temptation that you have been through, or what someone has ever said to you, or about you, you are his prized possession. I love that version. Turn to the person next to you and say, "You are God's prized possession." Have any of you done anything that you've regretted and you felt like a total loser? Have you ever put yourself down for making a mistake? Have you ever been called stupid, useless, dumb, fat, gay, an idiot, a loser? You'll never amount to anything. You're worthless, or anything negative like that? I have. When you went through that, or were told that, how did that make you feel? Like a piece of crap, right? It made you feel worthless or no value. I think all of us has felt worthless by what others have done or what someone has negatively said about us, right? Listen, man, the Bible calls Satan the father of lies, and he comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Satan wants to use your trials or negative labels to steal your self-worth, kill your self-confidence, and destroy you as a man. Don't let him. All right, who would like this $100 bill? Okay, only a handful of you? Okay. Okay, but what if I told this $100 bill that you're worthless, you're never going to amount to anything, you have no value, you're a loser. Anyone still want it? Okay, a couple people. Okay, what if I slapped it? What if I punched it? What if I spit on it? Take that, you good for nothing. Okay, anybody want it? Okay, I'm getting a few more people. But what if I crumpled this $100 bill up and I threw it on the floor and I stomped on it and even kicked it? Who wants it? Take that, you loser. Who wants it now? Okay, Dan's got his. Okay, why would you want it? It's been put down, it's been spit on, it's been kicked, it's been stepped on, and it's told you have no value. Why would you still want it? It still has value, right? Because no matter what I said to it or did to it, it still has the same value. It's still worth $100. Its value hasn't changed. So here's the point. The same is true with each one of us. No matter what trial or temptation you've been through, you still have great value to God. Even if you got shot while stealing from someone, you still have value, even more than this $100 bill. Listen, in Genesis, God says that you were created in his image. Psalms 139:14 says that you are fearfully and wonderfully made. Jeremiah 29:11 says that God has a plan and a purpose for your life, a hope and a future. And again, like I said earlier, James 1:18 says that you, or we, out of all of creation, became his prized possession. And that's why God sent his one and only Son to this earth to die an excruciating death for each one of us because he loves us so much. And Romans 8 says there's absolutely nothing that could separate you from the love of Christ. Even if you got up right now and you turned your back and you walked out and says, I don't want any part of him, he still loves you. Did you hear me? Absolutely nothing can separate you from his love. Listen, it doesn't matter what trial, test, or temptation you've been through. Do not let it define you as a loser or disqualify you from doing anything important for God. You still have value. You are God's prized possession. You are greatly loved. And there's absolutely nothing that can separate you from the love of Christ. No matter what you've done, no matter what anybody has ever said about you or done to you can lessen your value. Okay, did you guys hear me? Absolutely nothing. All right, turn to the person next to you and say, absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. Listen, man. Listen, man, God wants to turn our scars into stars. He wants to turn our disappointments into reappointments. It's not about what happened to you, but it's about what happens in you. Okay, I'd like to close real quick with James 1:22. And it says, don't be just hearers of the word, do what it says. Please take God's inspiration that you've heard tonight and apply it to your life, then let him transform you. And we're going to learn more about that next week. Thank you so much, and God bless.